that people like Jordan Peterson talk about from the biblical narratives, individuals at the core, like Jesus Christ, actually existed, actually walked this world, did predict his own death and resurrection. And then, if you could have a camera running on the tomb in and around 33 AD, that an actual Jesus would have walked out on the third day after his crucifixion and burial.
All right, that is a ridiculous claim about Jesus. To say he predicted his own death and resurrection in a book that is written decades after his time. I don't think that's how predictions work.
How else do you explain it? So it's at the crux of it. From the text of the New Testament, then, where is the actual hard evidence for you as an historian that that actually happened?
That is actually a good question. Like, where is the historical evidence, okay, that Jesus existed and he preached all whatever Christians believe in today uh, outside the Bible?
Yeah, I think we do, Pierce, have a historical question in terms of we have an actual character who we can demonstrate that lived, and then we have that same character being demonstrated in multiple independent and cross-reference sources, chief of which we call the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
What?
But just because those are religious texts now doesn't necessarily negate that they are historical texts.
It does. So the whole belief is that you have to believe in the four gospels and that's where you get all the information about Jesus, right? So there is no historical evidence if all your information come from one book, right? With multiple versions, right? And get updated every now and then, right? And it's corrupted and changed, modified more than my Windows actually. And then you're just supposed to trust that, and whatever that book tells you, you have to trust it. And we know that the Gospels are copying from each other, right? The book of Mark, Matthew copied from Mark, and then Luke as well copied from this Q source and all that. What are we gonna do with all these facts about the Gospels?
These were independent written sources that come from the time frame. If we want to know about someone from the ancient world or history in general, we go to the earliest sources, preferably eyewitness sources. And I think that's what we have within the Gospels.
Did he even read any of those Gospels? You saying the writers of those Gospels are eyewitnesses? Did he just say that? We know that Mark is not eyewitness. Matthew is believed to be an eyewitness because he was disciple of Jesus, but his gospel is a copy of Mark and another source called source Q again, right? And that's and then we have Luke, who never met Jesus, who didn't even speak his language. He's a Greek Jew who is a disciple of Paul, and then he wrote his own like thing later on after the time of Jesus. And then you got John like later on as well with like the most disputed gospel ever. What are you talking about? Eyewitnesses.
This wasn't a short event. And so there were as many as, Paul says, up to 500 witnesses who took part in this event before his ultimate, resurrecting, going to the ascension of.
Wait, hold it. So the title of this episode on Piers Morgan, right? It says up to 500 witnesses. Is the proof of Jesus Christ's resurrection? Wesley Huff interview. Okay, and then it comes to this part where he says, well, Paul says that there were 500 witnesses. Okay, witness the resurrection, right? And then you ask yourself, who are these people? Can you name one? Right? Well, can you name two? I mean, like, give me some names. Who are the witnesses? And you go back and you ask about, who this character was, right? Who is this Paul? Well, he was a Greek Jew who didn't even speak like the language of Jesus, and he never met Jesus, right? And he was actually prosecuting the Christian. He hated the Christians, the first early Christian community. He hated them. He persecuted them. He killed them. And then later on, we have this story about him converting to Christianity because he saw a vision of Jesus coming to him and ask him to stop prosecuting his people. And then he has this change of heart, and then he become like this devoted Christian, and like preaching Christianity. But then he destroyed the whole religion. He destroyed the whole religion. Everything. He changed everything. So when he says there's 500 witnesses, right? Paul says this. Who are these witnesses? How are you saying that there is 500 witnesses when yourself you weren't even there? You weren't even there. You were not there. Why do we believe in this guy? Why do we not ask the actual disciples, right? The disciples that we rejected, not me. I'm not a Christian. You rejected their gospels, right? The gospel of Thomas, the gospel of Peter, Mary, and all that. Why did you reject all the gospels, right? That belong to those actual disciples, people who walked with Jesus and spoke to him and were actual his students, and then you accept the work of this random guy, Paul, who was actually killing the Christians. I know why. Because you already have a narrative, you already have a dogma, and you need the work that confirms those narratives. That's why you include the book of Luke, and you include Acts, and then you include all the work of Paul and everything he says to justify the crucifixion of a Messiah who were never supposed to be crucified from the Old Testament.
The right hand of the Father. And so the best explanation to that is that this event actually did take place.
Again, just to be clear, the 500 witnesses is one guy who never met Jesus, never have anything to do with that event, who is saying that there were 500 witnesses, if that makes sense. Like, I don't understand how anyone would believe such a thing. And based on that, you believe in the resurrection.
The counter argument is that Paul the Apostle wasn't there for the resurrection.
Thank you.
Himself.
Thank you.
There's no other reference really, other than I think the 1 Corinthians chapter 15. There's only one other reference to the fact that 500 people witnessed this. Does any of that, in your eyes, put more doubt on it?
All right, please give me a.
I don't think so, because I think when we look...
Because this is a real question. This is the question that always pops up, right? How can you believe a guy who was never there, right, has nothing to do with this event whatsoever, and then you believe his words, 500 witnesses? This better be a good explanation.
Look at something that we can try to historiographically explain, we look at the various explanations and then we account for the data. So you're correct in the sense that 1 Corinthians 15 is the only place that's mentioned where we talk about these 500 witnesses who saw Jesus all at once. However, when you corroborate those with the accounts that we find particularly in Matthew, Luke, and John, I think it does explain, especially when you have the instance at the ascension in Matthew and Luke, that those 500 people could have been the individuals on the mount when Jesus ascended. It's not overt in the text, but I think even the fact that we have one instance of this being spoken about, and then we can look at the individuals Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and then others in the New Testament documents that talk about the resurrection. In terms of him then going on and writing the majority of Holy Scripture within the New Testament.
And corrupted the whole thing. He just left that part out. Wait, he didn't. He said a whole lot of nothing. He said a lot of nothing. Like, he didn't explain why can we trust Paul, who has nothing to do with this. Like, what? And then he quoted like Luke and the book of Acts and all that, that is written by the disciple of Paul. Luke was a disciple of Paul. He was his student. And Acts, the book of Acts, is just a ass to his master, Paul. Right? So, you see the circling, like the whole circle, like just unbelievable. So I'm still I still don't understand why do we have to trust this guy, Paul. Okay. And this is the perfect opportunity for any Christian to actually explain why Christians believe in Paul, but he wasted it.